Well, greetings, world, and greetings, Seven Spot, and
Greetings.
greetings, Mike, and greetings, Dave. How's everybody?
Many
Well,
happy
good.
returns.
With a bit of jet lag, but I'm alive.
That's really fantastic. So the reason why we're here is this is a low cost build show, and you guys are low cost builders, but you guys are taking a little bit of a different approach in that you're not building from scratch. All of you, you have acquired somebody else's mistake, and then you made it your business to finish the project, but not finishing somebody else's project. You're making your own project out of it. So I'm going to ask each one of you to describe your project, and then afterwards we'll probably take a look at. Actually, I'll play a little slideshow, and you can tell us where you've been and where you want to go.
Mhm.
Do you want to start, Mike?
Yeah. Okay. Let's start.
Okay, this is low cost progress with Mike. So this is kind of how it was when you received it, because I
Well,
can tell that
was
because
a
it's
little bit more
on the
naked.
trailer.
So basically, the beams in the back were missing. Yeah, there was still a little bits and bobs missing, which we have attached over the. Yeah, I would say
Hmm.
last year. Progress was very, very slow. I actually took it to my workplace because I thought, okay, on Saturday afternoon I can stay a little bit longer, but
Hmm.
I never really got any progress. So I decided to bring it back to my garage um, and go from there.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so last, let's say, recent month, we or I got a little bit more progress, found out some more things. That's the thing when you buy someone else's projects, which is not accordingly to the book, you will have some surprises. So I
Yeah.
found out that the rear axle didn't fit. I still have to think about the pedal box where it might go. It feels. I had a test seat a couple of weeks ago
Hmm.
with a simulated lowered floor, which was okay. However,
Hmm.
bearing in mind then, if you have a seat, the floor will go up again.
Hmm.
Yeah, and when I was sitting once in then a very early stage without a lowered floor, it felt I had not enough space for my legs. So one
Hmm.
of those things. Yeah, there may be some more beams which need to be moved. Um, I bought a couple of weeks ago a spare wheel holder from a caterer, which looks good, but I have a feeling again I have to adapt my plan and perhaps even make one myself. So
Yeah.
many little things
Hmm.
um, which you trip just over it. And I don't know how long it takes. I mean, I want to finish ideally the welding by the end of British summer, when you can say that we never have a summer anyway. Um,
well,
and
well,
then
you.
carry on with possibly getting the engine in through the winter, wiring loom in. The idea was to actually finish the car by spring next year in order to get it then through the so-called IVA test. IVA is basically a one-off test to make the car road legal. I don't know if how it works in the rest of the world. If they have this, so it's a one-off test which the government checks. Then is the car road legal? Is the car ready for the road? Are the
Hmm.
lights are the correct height, and so on and so on. It's quite intense thing. Actually, for those who are in UK, there's a really good video from MK Sports Cars about that. Actually, it's two videos. It's really worth to watch about the IVA test. For those who coming new, um, you should also consider in the very beginning what you want to do. So, for example, bike engine versus car engine. You have to think if you go for bike engine, you need to have a pretty much long ratio. Now, back in the days, a Sierra diesel diff was easy to get. Those parts getting rare now. If you can get one, is
Hmm.
expensive. BMW parts are relatively cheap. However, the problem is there's no kit available. Let's say like from MK Sports Cars, where you
Yeah.
just convert it because by law you need to have a reverse gear, yeah,
Hmm.
for this IVA test in UK. After that it
Yeah.
doesn't matter, but for that once you need to have a reverse gear. Now Quifey, they're doing a reverse box, which is again very expensive. Those ones from Westville, I've heard they're made out of chocolate. They
Yeah.
break. So it's lots of things to consider before you start in order to avoid doing the same job twice, and particularly spending money in the wrong direction.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned somebody else's project. Could you just tell us when you picked up this space frame, what was the intention of the person that you purchased the car from? What was their plan? What was their project about, and how does it differ from your vision?
So that guy, he wanted to create something modern with a rotary engine. As far as I remember, he wanted to install a Mazda gearbox, possibly also Mazda differential, because it was very narrow on the back where the diff possibly could fit in. Um, yeah, he had too many projects, but also I think he has realized how difficult it is to make something which is not according to the book. And I think that at some point he was thinking, okay, well, let's just work around with some other normal road cars.
So at this picture, I mean, obviously he was going with the MX-5 differential, and of course this is a live axle that you've got.
Yeah.
Where did you source that, and how are you planning to do the install?
So basically, that was I found that rear axle on eBay in Kent, not far away from the racetrack Brands Hatch, if you know that, back from the Formula One days.
Mm-hmm.
Was fairly cheap. It's possibly from a Cortina. I'm not 100% sure because most of the Ford Escorts Mark 1 and 2, they should have the so-called English axle. That's that's a so-called Cologne or Köln axle,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Okay.
which normally should be just found in rest of Europe, in particular Germany, hence the name Köln.
Köln, yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Which people say the forms is not that strong. However, I'm not planning to have 200 brake horsepower. So
Well, that's
my
what.
approach will be to make a replica of an old car.
Yeah, and that's where I was going with this. You know, he was going. I understand it with a. Was he planning to do a rotary engine? And then what are you doing? If you what engine are you using, and what transmission?
So basically, I will use a 1600 so-called crossflow, which was found in Cortina Capris,
Mm-hmm.
Mark II Escorts. Also later on in a slightly different version in Ford Fiestas, later Ford Escorts, but then obviously as a transverse engine. The gearbox as well is coming from a Cortina or Capri. It's a so-called Ford Type 3 gearbox, not a Type 9. Again, I'm not putting 200 brake horsepower through, so I can use pretty much lower rated gearboxes.
So this is a tourer instead of a track car.
Yeah. I mean, I will do probably some. Well, there's one hill climb nearby once a year, which is for road cars. It's more or less a show off. You've got a little bit straight, some curves, where you can accelerate the car, and that's pretty much it. Yeah.
So I'm just looking at the placement of the differential and as it's sitting in the car there. You've obviously moved one of the vertical bars, and it does it have a narrower tunnel than you mentioned? It was designed for an MX-5 differential. Is that a standard width tunnel, or is that has it been narrowed?
That is a little bit more narrow. However, I measured it. I also pre-installed the prop shaft, and that's now lining up. So I had to change the other beam as well around.
That's a good thing because as Dave is sitting there in the background, he has a similar situation as we're all. I'm going to say well-sized people. Having a seat that you can actually climb into is an important thing. And I know that Dave, you had in yours, you had an undersized seat, and you're developing a larger seat to sit on. Is that right?
Yeah, I had like Pro Car sport seats that have like a 14.5-inch opening to sit in.
Yeah.
And now I've got a pair of 914 seat pans that I found on eBay.
Yeah.
So they're bare fiberglass, and I'll just do a little bit of patch, and then I will probably foam them in, and they'll get skinned in carbon, and then I'll make my upholstery from there.
There you go.
similar to
So-
what the current Caterham seats, the
Mhm.
cloth seats, but
As we're sitting here looking at this is with your differential, Mike, and maybe Dave, you can take note of this because you are going, Dave, to put an MX5 differential and rear suspension in yours, and I'm taking it that yours has an extra wide tunnel in it right now, or have you measured that?
since mine came as a bike engine build,
Hmm.
there's no those vertical aspect that Mike has in his around the nose of the diff are not even there on mine. So,
Okay.
and since I'm bolting in the whole Miata subframe,
Hmm.
some of that can be avoided. I'll only have to make a mount that grabs the bottom of the diff,
Hmm.
just like the PPF does when it's in a Miata. So
Hmm.
I think that might be a little bit easier, and there's a lot of room since mine is going to be mounted more forward than most people that are trying to put a whole Miata rear subframe in. I've moved mine almost 2 inches forward, so the mount is actually in front of the rear bulkhead.
Okay,
The,
got it.
the, the front two tabs, it'll make sense. I don't know if there's a picture in my little slideshow thing, but it also, just from the fender size, will actually make it look normal. You
Hmm.
know how, like, when the fender comes down on the back of a lot of them, it's before the curve of the rear, like the trunk area.
Hmm.
And if I leave the subframe where it would naturally mount aft of the rear bulkhead, the fenders come all the way to the back, like past the curve. So it would look really strange. And since, my whole thing is in pieces, I just said, all right, what happens if I slide my subframe forward and I got that extra 2 inches? It shortens the wheelbase back down to like 92, 93,
Hmm.
up down from like 98 where it was before. And it gives me room to put normal size, like a 30-inch distance fender on there.
Yeah. Well, that brings us to a different point of discussion. Now, here's one thing I noted, Mike, in yours, and I can relate to it in even though mine was a kit, it came with a Ford T-Bird differential in it, and like yours, if it was on a standard space frame, it would not have fit. And this particular portion that I'm tracing over right there, I had to do some bashing to make it fit. But you've actually you've chopped and welded in one, two, three different portions to it to make it work.
Yes and no. There's a little trick. What you can do is you don't need to chop everything.
Hmm.
So I cut out the rear piece.
Yeah.
But what I did actually first thing was I cut a little V, but left part on the back, so I
Okay.
could move it over.
Yeah.
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 So that one which faces actually the prop shaft wasn't touched, or drive
Hmm.
shaft as you say, wasn't
Yeah.
touched. So just had more or less than to weld then a little part of box steel in between
Yeah.
to cover it up. Which was quite handy, because otherwise you have to cut, and I was just feeling that's the easier approach, to be honest.
Well, it looks great, but it brings us to another topic of discussion and one of discovery for people who are building, especially people who are not building from the book, but doing an abrogation like you guys are. It's, how wide is the space frame versus how wide is the differential on yours, Dave. You have yours came with a live axle and it had gobs of extra space, but the MX5 has been causing you some concern about how it's going to fit on that. Yours is a McSorley, so it's a different dimension from what Mike's got.
Yeah, my frame is 46 inches to the outside of the outer rails, and
Hmm.
each seat box is 19 inches. So at least they're symmetrical, which I had some concerns about. I was wondering if one would be wide and one would be extra narrow, but they're both
Hmm.
19 inches. And I think I had a Ford Mustang 98 something, like a SN95 Mustang solid axle, I believe.
Well, bring yours in, and we'll just take a peek at what you've got. Yours. This is looking at your project 2 years back. Is this on your property, or is this
No,
as you found it?
this is at the guy's spot where I took the U-Haul truck to get it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we decided I brought these wheels home because he had another set of wheels that actually looked way cooler. I really wanted them. They were like 20 spoke, really neat looking, but they
Yeah.
wouldn't go over the hub bore on the front. Hubs was
Oh
too
yeah.
big.
Yeah.
These are apparently Mustang 2 spindles. I thought they were 98 Mustang
Mm-hmm.
spindles, and I posted them like that on Facebook Marketplace, and a guy quickly corrected me, so that was good.
Mm-hmm.
But they're gone now, as are the A arms. But you can see it had live axle and the track rod for
Yeah.
all of that. And like probably I should have just finished the build from here. But
Yeah.
why do something the right way when you can do it my way? So and it was fine, but this axle also has way less offset. It's only like half inch or less than 1 inch. The Miata offset is a little more, but
Yeah.
you see, I don't know if you can. I don't even think any of these pictures like you can actually see, but there's so much room back there, right as you approach the rear bulkhead.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're looking from the side of the car, the bulkhead is like this, but there are no vertical tubes in the bottom half at all.
Yeah.
So it was just floating in there. It, I'm sure rigid enough for what it was going to be because it has what are they called? Swedge tubes everywhere. It had it for like track, toe. You know how you do that with the live axle, where you just like for alignment,
Mm-hmm.
everything was done with swedge tubes in the rear. And I actually stole two of them to mock up my current pushrod front suspension, which may
Yeah.
or may not work.
Yeah. Because you mentioned the push rod. This was already installed, or at least not the push rods, but it was a roller when you got it.
Yes, yeah, it was rolling, and the guy who originally built the frame, I believe, is on Low Cost USA. He's like 6'4", 6'5", and if you've been around the Seven Spot channel, you've seen me talk about this before. But he was very tall, and it had an R1 engine in it, so no provision for reverse. So I decided this is mostly going to be a road car for me. I wasn't going to only track it because I want to fool around and be able to take a single person at a time for a ride or whatever, drive it to school where the kids could see it, and it's all QA1 coilovers, which is fine. Right now, in my picture later in the thing, I have the R1 shocks that I got on eBay just so I could get the linkages, the bell cranks for those that are pre-made, and I've swapped out the whole. Now there's located the full Miata front subframe too, because I can lose 60 pounds. I'll let the 60 pounds be in the car and be very rigid and engineered by someone else, so I don't have to fiddle with it. But there were a lot of things that are really handy on this. The little cross tubes for the suspension mounts, the upper mount points, are going to come in really handy for bracing. It's like 1.5 inch, like 120 wall square tube that's notched and welded in. It's got a weird, it's a bit of a weird configuration, but it's going to come in handy for what I have to do currently. And I don't really have to move. I moved some things to get the transmission in because obviously with the bike engine, the transmission tunnel was normal height. So I didn't have to move any of that. But yeah, with the whole rear subframe, it locates the diff for me. So I'm a little bit locked in there, but it'll make some things easier. Mike, are you using a factory prop shaft from something?
So yeah, well, basically my one is not finished yet. I bought parts because the rear axle is different from that part, from the front part. So the front part came from a Type 9 gearbox, which I don't use, so the nose is different. I had to buy another nose from a Ford Capri, which I got it on my car already. So to adapt everything, I just saw a week ago a prop shaft which might fit from a low cost with the right nose and definitely with the right flange. Around an hour's driving from me, which I go for hunt next week. Will save me a little bit time cutting welds, plus that front nose which I have from the prop shaft needs new bearings. Pretty much for the same price of a bearing I can get eventually the whole prop shaft, which is already cut to size. I just need to install it, which again, as you said, saves me some time and some sweat.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about the difference between the original builder's plans and what you're doing. And Mike has pointed out that he's building a cruiser and it's not going to have the rotary engine. It's basically going to be what he wants to have. And Dave, what engine and transmission are you using?
Well, I'm using a K24 Honda engine and a transmission out of an S2000. And I think I've just found adapters that'll take a S2000 to a 1013 or 1031, whatever, like a Jeep drive shaft, like a very standard Dodge America drive shaft. And there's a flange for the Miata output flange of the diff too. So if I can get these two adapters, then I can just get a 1031 shaft. I don't, it won't have slip yoke and all this other things that I may or may not need. But with the independent rear suspension, the diff nose should be locked in place relatively, and the transmission tail should be locked in place relatively. So I should be okay with the little wobble in the two rubber mounts for that to switch to that size drive shaft, which is much easier to find, because then I can just get a 26 or 27 and a half inch 1031 drive shaft. They're available in a lot of places. I think I can even get one at Speedway Motors over here. I don't remember if you're familiar with them too, but they do like a lot of dirt track and sprint car stuff. So all the U.S. guys end up buying their like screw-in ball joints and things. That's what was on this already, the Pinto spindles and all that. So hopefully those things will bolt together with just using adapters instead of having custom plates made to match the S2000 8-bolt drive shaft with a smaller pattern to the 4-bolt Miata input. I think adapting it to something that's way more common is going to be the easiest way for me.
Well, this is really cool that we're getting the opportunity to get together here, guys. And let's be frank, what we really would like to do at Seven Spot, and I'm sure on your individual channels, is we want to develop a conversation, because in my case, it's not about me. I built mine from a kit. It's just basically a big mechano project. But I do think that we will all benefit. And when I'm speaking about all of us, I'm talking about the larger community. We'll all benefit by having the opportunity to have some conversation. And what I'm hoping to do, I'm going to make a copy of this and send you guys a duplicate of the video so that we can perhaps bring more people in to discuss their projects so that we can add to the conversation. Is that something that you guys would consider?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Even if we get manufacturers to talk about what, I don't mind being told what I'm doing wrong.
Yeah, no, that's good. Actually, I was speaking to a manufacturer or a kit car manufacturer in Ohio recently, and we're planning to do a little bit of work together. So I'll be bringing you, Dave, along on that conversation as it evolves, if you're interested, because it'd be a similar time zone.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I found a stalker frame for sale on Facebook Marketplace here. Somebody it just was a roller, but even the layout of the tubes and all of this, and it's so different.
Yeah.
And when they do their little profile ride around, they have one that you can get with a K20 in it, which is why I was interested in seeing how it was set up. And everything is laid out like it's very sturdily made. I don't know. I'm surprised at how few tubes there are in some of these frames. Mike, was yours a Haynes build or a regular book frame?
My one came from the Haynes build one, but it was the first one, Ron Champion, which is that one.
Yeah.
So it's with the live rear axle. just a few things. Now that you said it, I don't know if you're aware of the sports car manufacturer Mallock. They have a similar layout. Have a look.
Yeah.
Let's say type in Mallock MK27 they were really popular in the 80s. They had a race series called Clubmans. It's still running
Yeah.
nowadays in UK. They
Yeah.
are kind of similar to the low cost ish. Apart from, I mean, if you see the frame, there's
Yeah.
so many more beams in. They're so proper stiff. But then the 7, well, was designed in the 50s, and compared to nowadays, to a off-road race car, yeah.
Well, that's pretty cool. Now, your background, Mike, is you obviously know your way around different space frames because you were a builder of cars before you got into this. You were in Formula V, were you not?
Yeah, so basically, I had over the years lots of projects, but I never built anything completely from scratch. So
Yeah.
that's perhaps one of the deepest projects. I always bought. Well, my last Formula V project also was a chassis,
Hmm.
which I sold on then for another car. Then I started another project which was called the Race Kids Falcon for the category is called 750 Formula 750 in UK.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm helping a friend of mine with his Formula V, so which you can see here in the background. So
There it
that's
is.
so-called Lee
Yeah.
Stone. So
Yeah.
obviously the bodywork is partially missing.
Hmm.
So yeah.
So I guess this point of the conversation is where do we go from here? And what I would like to do is kind of bring us along when the time is right for you guys, and try to. I try to do it in a forum where I can collect more people to add to the conversation. Now, folks, what we have done in the past is we've done webinars on building low costs, and I'm going to suggest that perhaps we use the same format again. What do you think of that, Dave?
Oh yeah, the one with Steve and Al that we did was. I still have to go back and watch things and check and like, what did they say? What are they using? Because you can never remember everything that we just mentioned.
Yeah. But I think it's a great format because we can have a whole bunch of people join the program, and they'll be exclusively interested, and it won't be just a bunch of people just entertaining themselves. So guys who are actually in the process or about to join the process of building
Yeah.
their own car. So I think that is the perfect format for us to move
I
towards.
think personally it's a really good idea. However,
Hmm.
what I was missing so far, perhaps we should start from the very beginning to show someone the consideration. What do I want? What do I expect? And what
Hmm.
way I'm going?
That's a
Yeah.
perfect idea. Yeah. So, guys, what do you think? Shall we end our little our foray into the future
Hmm.
about here? And I'm going to ask, stay online until this totally uploads, because
Hmm.
it goes to the servers individually, and we'll save it, and I'll send you a copy to each one of you by Dropbox.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, guys, we will see you at 7 Spot.
See you soon on
All
7
right.
Spot.
Fantastic. Bye, guys.
Bye.